Look at a clock. Every single second that ticks by is a part of our universe. But what if we rewind it? Past the birth of humanity, past the formation of the Earth, past the ignition of the very first star, all the way back to 13.8 billion years ago, the exact fraction of a second when the cosmos exploded into existence. We call it the Big Bang. But here is the single most fascinating and terrifying question in all of science. What was happening exactly 24 hours before that? How can a day exist if time itself hasn't been invented yet? What does a place look like when there is no space, no light, no atoms, and absolutely zero matter? Did our entire reality spark out of true, empty nothingness? Or are we living inside the graveyard of an older, dead universe? Take a slow, deep breath, because tonight we are going to break the fundamental laws of reality. We are going to step past the absolute limit of time, cross into the ultimate dark, and find out what was waiting on the day before the Big Bang. Welcome back to Dozing Doctor. Tonight, dim the lights, let your mind detach from the waking world, and drift back to a time that scientifically shouldn't exist. Take a slow, deep breath and let go. Let your mind drift away from the present moment. Release your grip on the concept of today, of yesterday, and of tomorrow. In the waking world, time is a strict, unyielding master. It is measured in the frantic ticking of clocks, the rising and setting of the sun, the turning of calendar pages, and the relentless march of obligations. But out here, in the profound, boundless quiet of the deep cosmos, human time does not exist. Time, as we understand it, is merely a shadow. It is a ruler we constructed to measure our own brief, fleeting existence on a single, tiny grain of rock spinning in an infinite ocean of dark. Tonight, we are going to break that ruler. We are going to untether ourselves from the linear flow of reality and move in a direction that the human mind was never designed to travel. We are going backward. Imagine the entire history of the universe as a magnificent, sprawling tapestry, woven with threads of gravity, starlight, and ancient dust. We are standing at the very edge of this tapestry, looking back at 13.8 billion years of cosmic events. From our vantage point in the present, the beginning looks like a solid wall, a blinding, impenetrable flash of light that scientists call the Big Bang. We are told that this is where the story starts. We are told that before this moment there was no space, no matter, and no time. But is that the truth, or is that simply the limit of human vision? To find out, we must begin the grand rewind. Watch the sky outside the viewport of your mind. We are engaging a cosmic engine that reverses the fundamental flow of entropy. Slowly, the unyielding forward momentum of the universe begins to stall, halt, and then gently, seamlessly, slip into reverse. Look down at the Earth. We are watching the history of our world unspool in perfect, silent symmetry. The great, glittering webs of city lights shrink and extinguish, swallowed by the ancient dark. The vast concrete monuments of human civilization dissolve back into the earth. The continents, driven by the slow, grinding mechanics of tectonic plates, begin to drift backward. The Atlantic Ocean closes. The Americas merge with Europe and Africa, reforming the ancient supercontinent of Pangaea. We watch millions of years slip by in the span of a single, deep breath. The green forests of the world retreat, replaced by barren rock and volcanic fire. The oceans, once teeming with life, begin to boil and vaporize as we reach the violent, molten infancy of our planet. And then, the Earth itself loses its shape. It fractures, dissolving into a massive, swirling disk of red-hot dust and primordial debris. We have erased the Earth. We have erased 4.5 billion years of history. And yet, the universe around us is still incredibly vast, incredibly old, and filled with light. We push further back. The grand rewind accelerates. Look toward the sun. It is no longer the stable, life-giving hearth we know. As time flows backward, the sun expands, cools, and unignites. The massive gravitational pressure at its core is released. The brilliant sphere of plasma dissipates, spreading outward across billions of miles, returning to its original state, a vast, cold, silent nebula of hydrogen gas and stardust, floating aimlessly in the interstellar dark. Our solar system is entirely gone. We are now drifting through a completely alien Milky Way galaxy. As we continue to fall backward through time, the very structure of the galaxy begins to change. The grand, sweeping spiral arms of the Milky Way start to untwist. Billions of ancient, dying stars are suddenly reborn, flashing from red giants back into brilliant blue youth, before finally dissolving into the clouds of gas from which they were born. Galaxies around us begin to pull closer together. The vast, empty voids of intergalactic space are shrinking. The expansion of the universe is running in reverse, compressing everything, drawing the entire fabric of reality into a smaller, denser, and hotter state. We are now 8 billion years in the past, then 10 billion, then 12 billion. The universe is changing its character. The familiar shapes of spiral and elliptical galaxies are gone. Instead, the cosmos is filled with massive, chaotic, and violent quasars, ancient, monstrous black holes devouring vast oceans of gas, blazing with a light so intense it outshines entire galaxies. But as we rewind further, even these cosmic leviathans vanish, swallowing their own light and fading into nothingness. We cross the 13 billion year mark. The first stars, massive, brilliant, and short-lived, unexplode. Their supernovas run in reverse, gathering their scattered heavy elements back into pure, pristine hydrogen and helium. And then suddenly, the lights go out. We have entered the cosmic dark ages. This is an era of absolute unbroken blackness. There are no stars here. There are no galaxies, no planets, and no light to guide our way. The universe is nothing but an immense, expanding sea of neutral hydrogen gas, cooling in the void. It is a profound, suffocating silence. If you were to open your eyes in this era, you would see exactly what you see when you close them in a pitch-black room. Breathe in the absolute darkness of the ancient cosmos. It is peaceful here. There is no motion, no chaos, no destruction. Just a quiet, sleeping universe waiting for the first spark of light. But we cannot stay in the dark. We must keep pushing backward. As we rewind through the dark ages, moving closer and closer to the very beginning, the temperature of the silent universe begins to rise. The space between particles is shrinking rapidly. The dark, cold fog of hydrogen gas begins to heat up, vibrating with intense, invisible energy. We are now approaching the boundary, the edge of human understanding, the wall where all of our physics, our mathematics, and our logic begin to break down. We reach the moment known as recombination, exactly 380,000 years after the theoretical beginning of time. Suddenly, the darkness shatters. We are engulfed in a blinding, omnipresent wall of fire. The universe is no longer a vacuum. It is a dense, opaque, glowing fog of superheated plasma. Every single point in space is filled with a light so intense, so overwhelmingly bright, that it is impossible to see anything else. This is the primordial fire. This is the afterglow of creation, the very light that we now detect as the cosmic microwave background. From here, the rewind becomes extreme. We are no longer measuring time in billions of years. We are measuring it in millennia, then centuries, then minutes, then fractions of a single second. The universe compresses violently. The ambient temperature skyrockets into the billions, then trillions of degrees. The fundamental forces of nature, gravity, electromagnetism, the nuclear forces, begin to melt and merge into a single, incomprehensible superforce. The basic building blocks of matter, protons and neutrons, dissolve into a chaotic, boiling soup of pure energy. And then we hit the limit. We arrive at the singularity. The cosmic clock reads 13.8 billion years in the past. Time equals zero. According to every textbook, every telescope, and every equation humanity has ever written, this is the end of the road. This is the absolute beginning. a point of infinite density and infinite temperature, where the entire mass of the universe is crushed into a space smaller than a single atom. They tell us that before this point, the word before has no meaning. They tell us that asking what happened before the Big Bang is like asking what is north of the North Pole. It is a geographical impossibility, a mathematical dead end. But out here, in the quiet sanctum of your mind, we do not have to accept the limits of mathematics. The human imagination is not bound by equations. Look closely at this singularity, this tiny, infinitely dense point of light. Is it truly the beginning of everything? Or is it merely a door? Is it just the ashes of a previous cosmos, crushed down under its own weight, waiting to spark a new reality? The 13.8 billion year mark is an illusion. It is not a solid wall. It is an event horizon. It is a curtain drawn across the stage of existence, hiding the true origins of the void. Take a deep, slow breath. Anchor yourself in the quiet dark. We have reached the edge of time. We have watched our universe unweave itself into a single point of light. Now, we are going to do what science says is impossible. We are going to step past the singularity. We are going to cross the boundary of absolute zero and step into the silent, uncharted territory of the day before the Big Bang. Let the blinding light fade. Let the mathematical noise quiet down. Prepare to enter the ultimate unknown. Having paused at the threshold where known reality unravels, we now turn our attention inward to the mechanical heart of cosmic time itself. Human perception treats time as a straight line, an arrow shot from an unknown bow, traveling endlessly into an uncertain future. We experience it as a river that flows in only one direction, carrying memories behind us and pushing events toward us. But to understand what happened before the dawn of everything, we must learn to view time not as a flowing river, but as a dimension, a spatial coordinate woven tightly into the very fabric of space itself. In the realm of general relativity, space and time are not separate entities. They are bound together into a single, four-dimensional continuum known as spacetime. Just as you can move forward, backward, left, or right through physical space, the universe itself possesses the geometric capability to stretch, bend, compress, and reverse its temporal direction. As we engage the mechanism of cosmic rewind, observe how the geometry of the universe responds. In our current epoch, the cosmos is expanding at an accelerating rate, driven outward by the mysterious, omnipresent force of dark energy. Vast intergalactic voids, immeasurable gulfs of dark, empty vacuums spanning hundreds of millions of light years, are constantly stretching, pushing clusters of galaxies farther and farther apart. But as we force the cosmic clock to turn in reverse, this expansion halts. The invisible tension of dark energy eases, relaxes, and turns inside out. Instead of stretching, the cosmic fabric begins to pull back. Imagine an infinite dark ocean drawn inward by a silent, irresistible tide. The immense voids between galaxy clusters begin to shrink. The vast, cold, empty spaces that once separated island universes vanish by degrees. Galaxies that were once isolated by unfathomable distances, drifting alone in the freezing blackness of deep space, now begin to feel the intimate gravitational draw of one another. Observe the local supercluster as space contracts. Thousands of galaxies, each containing hundreds of billions of suns, begin a slow, majestic convergence. They do not collide violently. Rather, they glide toward one another like silent ships meeting on a dark sea. Spiral arms interlace smoothly. Golden galactic bulges merge, blending their vast collections of ancient stars into unified, brilliant rivers of stellar light. As space contracts, the fundamental density of the universe begins its steady, exponential rise. Matter, which was once diluted across billions of cubic light years, is drawn closer together. The average temperature of the cosmos, currently hovering just a few degrees above absolute zero, begins a slow, unstoppable ascent. Consider the physical nature of heat. Thermal energy is nothing more than the motion of particles. In a cold, expanded universe, Particles are spread so thin that they rarely interact, moving sluggishly through the vast void. But as the volume of space shrinks, these same particles are squeezed into tighter quarters. They begin to brush past one another, colliding with increasing frequency, transforming the quiet vacuum into a vibrant, warm medium. We watch as light itself undergoes a monumental transformation. The photons of the cosmic microwave background, ancient light that has been stretching and cooling for 13.8 billion years, decaying into low-energy radio waves, are now being compressed. As space shrinks, the wavelengths of these photons are squeezed together, shortening their physical length. Radio waves compress into microwaves. Microwaves compress into invisible infrared heat. Infrared heat compresses into soft, red visible light. The dark sky, once blacker than midnight, begins to glow. It starts as a faint, barely perceptible crimson wash across the void, a twilight sky that has no sun, no horizon, and no single source. The light comes from everywhere at once, emanating from the very vacuum of space. As the cosmic clock rewinds further, the red light brightens, shifting into a deep, warm orange, and then into a brilliant, golden white. The entire universe has become an oven of pure, trapped light. At this stage of cosmic collapse, matter can no longer maintain its familiar structures. The immense heat and pressure strip electrons away from their atomic nuclei. Solid planets, asteroid belts, and rocky moons dissolved long ago, but now even gas giant planets and massive stars can no longer preserve their boundaries. The sheer ambient heat of the universe exceeds the internal thermal output of stars. Stars do not explode. They simply melt back into the universe. Imagine a magnificent, solid glass sculpture placed inside a furnace. As the ambient temperature rises, the sharp edges of the glass begin to soften, sag, and glow. Eventually, the distinct form of the sculpture disappears entirely, pooling into a liquid state. In the exact same way, the trillions of stars inhabiting the cosmic web dissolve into the surrounding space. Their plasma merges with the intergalactic medium, returning all matter to a unified primordial state. There are no longer individual objects in the universe. There are no stars, no planets, no nebulae, and no black holes. There is only a single, homogeneous, ultradense fluid filling every corner of reality, a glowing, churning ocean of subatomic particles and high-energy photons known as the quark-gluon plasma. In this hyperdense state, the laws of thermodynamics reign supreme. Pressure rises to levels that defy human description. Every single cubic centimeter of space contains more mass and energy than an entire galaxy in our present era. Yet, as extreme as this environment appears, the cosmic clock has not stopped. The universe continues to shrink, its volume having every fraction of a second, driving density toward infinity. As we squeeze deeper into the primordial compression, we witness the grand unification of physical forces. In our world today, the cosmos is governed by four distinct fundamental forces: gravity, which holds planets and galaxies together; electromagnetism, which governs light, electricity, and chemical bonds; the strong nuclear force, which binds atomic nuclei; and the weak nuclear force, which drives radioactive decay. These four forces operate at vastly different strength scales and distance ranges, giving our present universe its complex, varied architecture. But as heat and density reach critical thresholds during the rewind, the boundaries between these forces dissolve. First, electromagnetism and the weak nuclear force merge together, forming a single, elegant entity known as the electroweak force. Radiation and radioactive decay become two expressions of the exact same law. As the universe shrinks further, reaching temperatures of quadrillions of degrees, the strong nuclear force merges with the electroweak interaction. Matter can no longer exist even in subatomic form. Quarks and leptons lose their identity, dissolving into pure, undifferentiated field energy. Finally, as we approach the absolute limit of the rewind, a distance scale so small that it is measured in Planck lengths, gravity itself, the grand architect of space and time, merges with the other three forces. All four fundamental interactions of nature become a single, flawless, universal superforce. We have arrived at the Planck epoch. At this unimaginable scale, 10 minus 43 seconds after the theoretical 0 point, the very concepts of distance and geometry break down completely. Space is no longer a smooth, continuous fabric. Under the extreme concentrated pressure of quantum gravity, space fractures into a turbulent, chaotic, boiling foam. Dimensions fold in on themselves. Up, down, left, right, past, and future lose all geometric meaning. In standard physics, this is where the cosmic clock shatters. The gears of general relativity freeze. The equations return infinity, a mathematical admission of ignorance, a signpost stating that our current understanding of reality can go no further. The conventional narrative tells us that this singularity is the absolute starting line, a wall of infinite density from which time expanded outward. But look closely at the behavior of the universe at this hyperdense limit. Is a singularity a true physical object, or is it merely a mathematical illusion born from incomplete equations? When we observe nature, we find that infinities do not exist in the real world. A circle does not have infinite sides. An ocean does not contain an infinite number of drops. Infinity is a concept of the human mind, a placeholder used when our models fail to capture the underlying mechanics of a system. When an hourglass runs out of sand, the flow stops, but time does not end. The hourglass can simply be flipped over. As we stand at the edge of the Planck scale, surrounded by the quantum foam of unified forces, we realize that the rewind of our universe is not approaching a dead-end wall. It is approaching a compression limit, a maximum physical density allowed by the fundamental structure of quantum space. Space cannot be crushed into literal zero volume, just as a sponge cannot be compressed beyond the solid matter of its material. There is a physical limit to how tightly energy can be packed into a quantum field. When the universe reaches this absolute, ultimate density, the inward momentum of cosmic rewind does not result in destruction. It results in a pause, a moment of absolute, perfect balance between inward gravitational pressure and outward quantum repulsion. The cosmic clock has rewound to its absolute tightest spring. Every galaxy, every star, every atom, every thought, and every drop of light that will ever exist in our universe is compressed into a region smaller than a subatomic particle, holding its breath in the quiet dark. Rest in this moment of ultimate potential. Feel the sheer weight of an entire cosmos packed into a single, still, silent seed of energy. The forward motion has stopped. The backward motion has completed. You are suspended at the exact point of balance between what was, what is, and what is yet to come. The clock is fully wound. The universe is completely quiet, and in this perfect, motionless silence, we prepare to look past the seed, peering into the mysterious expanse that existed before the clock began to tick. Beyond the orderly march of stars, beyond the collapsing clouds of primordial gas, and beyond the glowing plasma of the early universe, we find ourselves standing before a boundary unlike any other in nature. It is not a wall built of brick, stone, or iron. It is not a barrier crafted from ice or fire. It is a boundary built into the very logic of human understanding, an impenetrable frontier known as the Planck Wall. To understand why this wall exists, we must first examine the twin pillars upon which all of modern science rests. For over a century, humanity has viewed the universe through two grand, masterful frameworks. On one side stands general relativity, Albert Einstein's sweeping theory of the cosmos on the largest scales. It describes a universe that is smooth, continuous, elegant, and predictable. In the realm of relativity, space and time form a seamless, flexible fabric. Massive objects like stars and planets rest upon this fabric, warping it with their weight, creating the gentle, invisible curves that we feel as gravity. Relativity is the physics of the macrocosm, the architecture of orbits, galaxies, cosmic expansion, and the grand curvature of space. On the other side stands quantum mechanics, the bizarre, probabilistic theory of the microscopic world. Quantum mechanics governs everything that happens at the scale of atoms, subatomic particles, and fundamental forces. In this subatomic realm, smooth certainty vanishes entirely. Nature ceases to be a predictable tapestry and becomes a churning, chaotic casino governed by probabilities, uncertainty principles, and spontaneous fluctuations. Here, particles can exist in multiple places at once, energy can be borrowed from the vacuum out of nowhere, and physical values jump in discrete, indivisible packets called quanta. For generations, these two theories have functioned with breathtaking accuracy in their respective domains. General relativity explains the movement of galaxies with flawless precision, while quantum mechanics enables our understanding of chemistry, silicon chips, and nuclear fusion. Yet, as our cosmic rewind squeezes the entire universe back toward the moment of creation, these two pillars are forced into the exact same microscopic space. And when general relativity meets quantum mechanics in a volume smaller than a single proton, they do not merge smoothly. They violently, fundamentally collide. Imagine taking a mountain range, stretching across hundreds of miles of continental crust, and attempting to compress its entire weight, mass, and gravitational force down into a space so infinitely tiny that it fits inside a subatomic particle. As the volume of space shrinks toward the Planck length, a distance scale measuring 10⁻35 meters, the smooth, flexible fabric of spacetime predicted by general relativity begins to tear. The gentle curves of gravity are overwhelmed by the violent, wild quantum fluctuations of the microscopic world. Gravity, which is normally the weakest force in nature, becomes hyperconcentrated. It gains so much energy in this minuscule volume that its quantum fluctuations become as massive as the space itself. In this realm, distance loses its classical meaning. If you attempt to measure a distance smaller than the Planck length, the energy required to probe that space is so immense that it instantly forms a microscopic black hole, swallowing the very measurement you were trying to make. Below this scale, the concept of here and there dissolves entirely. Space ceases to be continuous. It fractures into what physicist John Wheeler famously named quantum foam. Picture the surface of a calm, glassy ocean viewed from high above in an airplane. From a distance, the ocean appears perfectly smooth, unbroken, and serene. You can trace long, graceful lines across its surface. But if you zoom in closer and closer, down to the level of the breaking waves, the smooth surface completely disappears. You see spray, bubbles, chaotic turbulence, and white foam popping into existence and collapsing in fractions of a second. This is the state of the universe at the Planck scale. The smooth geometry of spacetime, which allowed light to travel in straight lines and clocks to tick in orderly intervals, has dissolved into a boiling, frothing sea of quantum foam. In this foam, wormholes open and snap shut in infinitesimally short periods. Tiny, temporary black holes pop into existence out of pure vacuum energy, instantly evaporating back into nothingness. Geometry itself becomes probabilistic. Up and down, left and right, past and future are tangled together in a chaotic quantum knot. This structural breakdown creates a profound crisis for human mathematics. When cosmologists plug these hypercompressed conditions into the field equations of general relativity, the mathematics begins to output nonsense. The equations return values of infinite density, infinite temperature, infinite pressure, and infinite curvature. In physics, an infinity is not a physical measurement. Nature does not contain infinite quantities. When an equation outputs infinity, it is a warning light flashing on the dashboard of human intellect. It is the universe telling us that our mathematical language has reached its limits, that our concepts are incomplete, and that our understanding of reality has broken down completely. This mathematical dead end is what we call the singularity. Mainstream science often presents the singularity as a physical object, a literal point of zero size containing infinite mass from which everything emerged. But in truth, the singularity is not a place or a thing. It is an artifact of broken equations. It is the wall where our current laws of physics cease to function. To cross this wall, we require a new kind of physics, a framework capable of uniting the smooth gravity of relativity with the chaotic quantum world. Scientists call this long-sought bridge the theory of quantum gravity. Various candidate theories have emerged from the quiet halls of theoretical physics, attempting to peer beyond the Planck Wall. String theory suggests that fundamental particles are not point-like dots, but tiny, vibrating one-dimensional strings operating in 10 or 11 dimensions of spacetime. At the Planck scale, these strings vibrate with ultimate tension, preventing space from ever collapsing into a true, infinitely dense point. Another profound framework, loop quantum gravity, proposes that space is not a continuous background at all, but is woven from discrete, indivisible loops of gravitational force. Just as a piece of fabric is woven from individual threads, space itself is composed of tiny quanta of volume. Because space has an indivisible minimum unit, you cannot crush matter into zero volume. The universe reaches a maximum, unbreakable density limit, preventing the formation of a literal singularity. Under these unified theories, the wall where physics breaks is not the end of existence. It is merely a transition zone, a cosmic threshold where the rules of our local reality were forged. Consider what it means to stand at this fundamental wall. All the familiar landmarks of nature have fallen away. Light cannot illuminate this realm, for photons cannot exist where electromagnetic fields are merged with gravity. Sound cannot travel, for there are no atomic structures to carry vibrational waves. Time cannot be measured, for there are no stable clocks, no repeating orbits, and no linear sequence of events. Yet, despite the total collapse of classical physics, there is no chaos in the ultimate sense. There is only a deep, profound, and untamed stillness. The breakdown of human equations does not mean the universe turned into chaos. It simply means we have reached the primordial source code of nature, a state of existence so pure, so unified, and so fundamental that our crude concepts of space, time, and matter are simply inadequate to describe it. Feel the sheer serenity of this realization. The wall where physics breaks is not a wall of destruction. It is a wall of protection. It shields the deep history of the cosmos from our inquisitive eyes, keeping the ultimate origins of reality wrapped in a quiet, sacred mystery. Here, at the Planck scale, the universe is resting in a state of absolute potentiality. Every physical law that governs your life today, the force that keeps your feet on the ground, the light that allows you to see, the chemistry that allows your heart to beat, was held in silent, motionless unity inside this quantum seed. Allow your mind to rest before this ancient frontier. The mathematical noise of the waking world has fallen quiet. The frantic search for answers has reached a natural, peaceful halt. We are standing at the absolute boundary of human knowledge, looking out into the quiet dark that exists beyond the equations, ready to discover what lies past the wall. We have successfully crossed the impenetrable barrier of the Planck Wall. The chaotic, boiling turbulence of the quantum foam, where gravity and subatomic forces wage their infinite, microscopic wars, has now been left far behind us. As we step over this ultimate threshold, the profound, unyielding pressure of the collapsing universe begins to evaporate. The sheer, overwhelming density that defined the singularity softens and dissolves into something entirely unexpected. We have arrived at t equals $0, the absolute zero point of the cosmic clock. Look around you in this unimaginable place. The blinding light of the primordial fireball is gone. The crushing heat has vanished. The violent roar of creation has been silenced. In their place is a state of existence so pure, so perfectly still, that it defies every instinct of the human mind. You are standing in the exact center of a frozen reality. To comprehend what it means for time to freeze, we must first unlearn everything our waking lives have taught us about existence. In the physical world you left behind, time is the invisible engine that drives all of reality. It is the steady heartbeat of the cosmos. We measure it by the rotation of planets, the swing of a pendulum, the decay of radioactive isotopes, and the beating of our own hearts. Time is fundamentally defined by motion. It is the measurement of change from one state to another. If a leaf falls from a tree, time is the invisible river that carries it from the branch to the soil. But what happens when the river stops flowing? What happens when every single particle, every wave of energy, and every fundamental force is stripped of its ability to change? Here, at t equals $0, entropy is at its absolute minimum. The arrow of time, which normally points relentlessly forward toward chaos and decay, has lost its direction entirely. Imagine a magnificent grand pendulum swinging inside an ancient grandfather clock. In the normal universe, this pendulum swings back and forth, slicing through the air, carving reality into seconds, minutes, and hours. But as we enter this ultimate cosmic epoch, the pendulum reaches the absolute peak of its arc, high up in the air. And it simply stays there. Gravity loses its pull. Momentum loses its push. The pendulum is suspended perfectly in the silent dark, frozen mid-swing, never to return. This is the state of the entire universe at the moment time equals 0. Every single quantum fluctuation, every vibration of the fundamental strings, every microscopic ripple in the fabric of space has been brought to a complete and permanent halt. The universe is no longer an active, expanding, dynamic theater of events. It has become a singular, static geometric object. It is a flawless, motionless sculpture of pure energy, suspended in an eternal, silent pause. Let your consciousness expand into this perfect stillness. Feel the absolute lack of urgency. In a world where time has frozen, there are no deadlines. There is no past to regret, for the past has been compressed into this single, motionless point. There is no future to fear because the very concept of next does not exist. There is only the eternal, unchanging, unmoving now. It is a sensation of ultimate safety. Nothing can degrade here. Nothing can age, nothing can fade, and nothing can be lost. The universe is holding its breath, and in this breath, it holds the blueprint of everything that will ever be, perfectly preserved in the silent dark. Theoretical physicists, peering into the mathematics of this timeless void, have offered profound explanations for this state of existence. The brilliant mind of Stephen Hawking, alongside James Hartle, proposed a framework to understand this frozen origin, known as the no-boundary proposal. They suggested that if we rewind the universe back to its ultimate beginning, time does not simply hit a brick wall and shatter. It does not crash into a sharp, jagged singularity. Instead, under the extreme compression of quantum gravity, time fundamentally changes its nature. It loses its forward-flowing characteristic and transforms into a spatial dimension. Time becomes imaginary time, behaving exactly like the dimensions of space we move through every day. To visualize this, imagine walking across the surface of the Earth. If you travel continuously northward across the continents, through the freezing winds of the Arctic, you will eventually reach the North Pole. But what happens when you arrive at the exact geometric point of the North Pole and someone asks you to walk further north? The request itself becomes meaningless. At the North Pole, there is no north. Every direction you face is south. You have not hit a physical wall. You have not fallen off the edge of the world. The Earth does not have a sharp beginning or a jagged edge. It simply curves smoothly into a continuous, unbroken sphere. The Hartle-Hawking state suggests that time behaves in the exact same way at t equals $0. As you rewind the cosmic clock closer and closer to the beginning, the dimension of time curves, smooths out, and rounds off, just like the surface of a globe. There is no edge of time. There is no boundary. There is no chaotic singularity where reality breaks. There is only a smooth, perfect, timeless sphere of existence. At the bottom of this cosmic globe, time behaves exactly like space. You cannot ask what came before t equals $0, because asking what came before time is exactly like asking what is north of the North Pole. The concept of before simply ceases to exist in the local geometry of reality. Rest in the profound beauty of this scientific realization. The universe did not begin in a violent, chaotic explosion. It did not tear its way into existence from a jagged, broken singularity. It emerged from a state of perfect, smooth, unbroken serenity. As you float in this frozen reality, Allow the profound silence to seep into your deepest consciousness. Notice how the absence of time washes away every lingering fragment of stress in your physical body. Your breathing matches the stillness of the quantum fields. Your heartbeat aligns with the motionless geometry of the cosmos. You are completely untethered from the rushing world. You are existing in the ultimate sanctuary. In this frozen moment, the universe is a closed loop of absolute perfection. It is a seed waiting in the deep winter of eternity, completely unaware of the spring that will eventually come. It does not know about the brilliant stars it will birth. It does not know about the swirling galaxies, the vast oceans, or the complex, beautiful minds that will one day look up at the night sky and wonder where it all came from. Right now, it simply is. It exists for the pure sake of existing, locked in an eternal, perfect slumber. Take a deep, slow breath in this timeless void. Fill your lungs with the quiet, motionless energy of the unbegun cosmos. Exhale, and let go of any remaining attachments to the forward march of time. Let the numbers on the clock fade from your memory. Let the turning of the earth slip away. You are suspended in the grand pause. There is nowhere else to be. There is nothing else to do. You have reached the bottom of the cosmic globe, the quietest, most peaceful place in the entire architecture of reality. Let the absolute stillness wrap around you like a heavy, comforting blanket, protecting you from the noise of the physical world. The clock is frozen. The universe is asleep. And as we prepare to look even deeper into the true nothingness that lies beyond the sphere, simply allow yourself to rest in the magnificent, unchanging silence of time standing still. We have stripped away the stars, the galaxies, the planets, and the ancient clouds of cosmic dust. We have rewound the fabric of space until every atom was dissolved back into pure field energy, and we have paused at the threshold of time where t equals $0 stands frozen in absolute geometric silence. Now, we must take the final, most radical step in our journey backward. We must remove even the frozen geometry of space itself. We must confront a concept that has haunted human thinkers, philosophers, theologians, and physicists since the dawn of conscious thought: the nature of absolute nothingness. What does it truly mean for there to be nothing? In our everyday waking lives, our intuition constructs a very simple mechanical definition of a void. If you take a glass container, seal it tight, and pump out every molecule of air, nitrogen, oxygen, and moisture, you might say the container is empty. If you paint the glass pitch black to block out every photon of sunlight, and wrap it in heavy lead shielding to block cosmic rays and radio waves, your human mind tells you that inside that box lies total, absolute emptiness. A pure, pristine dark. A spatial blank canvas where nothing exists. For centuries, classical physics agreed with this human intuition. Isaac Newton viewed space as an empty, motionless stage, an infinite dark hall where physical events took place, but which was itself entirely passive, cold, and quiet when matter was removed. In the quantum universe, however, classical intuition is fundamentally wrong. Absolute nothingness, as we human beings imagine it, a completely dead, motionless, energyless void, is physically impossible. Nature does not permit a true vacuum. Nature loathes absolute emptiness. To understand why nothing is impossible, we must look at the universe through the lens of quantum field theory, the most accurate and rigorously tested framework in all of human science. In quantum field theory, the fundamental reality of the universe is not made of tiny, hard particles like billiard balls. Instead, reality is composed of continuous, invisible fluid-like entities called quantum fields. These fields stretch endlessly throughout every single point in the entire universe. There is an electron field, a photon field, a quark field, a Higgs field, and a gravitational field. When you look at a star or a human hand, you are not looking at solid matter. You are simply observing localized ripples, waves, and excitations in these underlying quantum fields. A photon is just a ripple in the electromagnetic field. An electron is just a wave in the electron field. Now, imagine taking an infinite vacuum and removing every single particle, every wave, and every ripple. You smooth out every excitation until the quantum fields are resting in their lowest possible energy state. This state of lowest achievable energy is what physicists call the quantum vacuum. You might assume that a field in its lowest energy state would sit completely flat, completely motionless, like a pond on a windless night, but it cannot. At the microscopic, fundamental foundation of reality lies the unyielding law of the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. This fundamental law states that there is an absolute mathematical limit to how precisely we can know certain pairs of physical quantities at the exact same time. One of these pairs is energy and time. If a quantum field were to sit completely still at absolute zero energy, it would have an exact, known energy level 0 for an exact, known duration of time. This would be a direct, catastrophic violation of the quantum laws of nature. Because the universe must preserve quantum uncertainty, a quantum field can never be completely still. It must always wobble. It must always tremble. It must possess a perpetual, unremovable minimum energy known as zero-point energy. Because of this inescapable zero-point energy, the empty vacuum of space is not dead. It is not empty. It is not quiet. The quantum vacuum is a boiling, simmering, churning ocean of hidden activity, out in the deepest, blackest gulfs of space, where no star has shone for billions of years, where the temperature sits at the threshold of absolute zero. The vacuum is alive with energy. In every fraction of a second, across every cubic millimeter of space, virtual particles and antiparticles spontaneously pop into existence out of the empty dark. Electrons and positrons, photons and antiphotons, quarks and antiquarks spring forth directly from the vacuum, borrowing energy from the quantum uncertainty of the void. They exist for an unimaginably brief fraction of a second, a fleeting moment so short that it evades direct observation, before slamming back into one another and annihilating, returning their borrowed energy back to the dark. Space is not a quiet void. It is a boiling, froth-filled sea of microscopic creation and destruction. The vacuum is pregnant with form. It is a cosmic engine that never turns off, simmering with infinite potential. If you find this difficult to believe, if your human intuition insists that empty space must be completely still, consider the quiet elegance of the Casimir effect. In a lab, scientists take two perfectly smooth, mirror-polished metal plates and place them inside an absolute vacuum chamber, completely shielded from light, magnetic fields, and heat. The plates carry no electrical charge. They are simply two cold, dark pieces of metal facing each other in the dark, separated by a distance smaller than the width of a single bacterium. If space were truly empty, nothing would happen. The two plates would sit there motionless for eternity. Instead, the moment the plates are brought close enough together, an invisible, ghostly force grabs hold of them. The two plates are pushed toward each other, drawn together by a gentle, steady physical pressure. Where does this force come from? It comes directly from the boiling vacuum of nothing. The two closely spaced metal plates, there is only a tiny, restricted amount of space. Only virtual particles with very short, high-frequency wavelengths can fit in the narrow gap between them. But outside the plates in the rest of the vast vacuum chamber, virtual particles of all wavelengths, long, medium, and short, are boiling into existence without restriction. There are literally more virtual particles popping into existence on the outside of the plates than on the inside. The vacuum outside pushes harder than the vacuum inside. The emptiness itself exerts a measurable physical force. Scientists have measured this force with exquisite precision. It is real. It is constant. It is the undeniable signature of an invisible, eternal ocean of energy that fills every corner of existence. Now, bring this profound realization back with you to the threshold of our cosmic journey. We stand on the day before the Big Bang, looking out past the boundary of our universe, past t=0, past the birth of time itself. We are looking into the ultimate primordial void. Was there ever a moment of true, dead nothingness? Science answers with a resounding, beautiful no. Before our universe came to be, before our local time began to tick, the primordial vacuum was already there. It was hovering in the timeless dark, a vast, boundaryless ocean of zero-point energy, simmering with quantum fluctuations. In this pre-cosmic state, there were no galaxies, no stars, no matter, and no light. There was no space as we measure it today, but there was the potential for everything. The primordial vacuum was an infinite sleeping mind, holding every mathematical possibility in its quantum fluctuations. Theoretical physicists studying inflationary cosmology suggest a breathtaking model for what happened next. If you have a boiling ocean of quantum vacuum, filled with continuous energy fluctuations, most of those fluctuations remain microscopic. They pop into existence, wobble for a fraction of a Planck second, and dissolve back into zero-point stillness. But every once in an eternity, across vast, timeless stretches of the pre-cosmic void, a quantum fluctuation occurs that is slightly larger, slightly denser, and slightly richer in energy than the surrounding space. Instead of collapsing back into the vacuum, this unique, hyperdense fluctuation triggers a runaway quantum reaction. It steps into a state known as a false vacuum, a region of hyperconcentrated potential energy that exerts a powerful, repulsive gravitational force. In an instant, this tiny, localized bubble of vacuum begins to expand at a rate that defies human imagination. It doubles in size every fraction of a second, stretching from a region smaller than a subatomic particle into a vast, smooth, cosmic ocean spanning light years across. This process is inflation. And as this expanding bubble of false vacuum eventually slows down, its massive, stored potential energy decays, raining out into the bubble like a sudden, omnipresent waterfall of heat and light. The false vacuum converts its energy into a dense, boiling soup of quarks, gluons, photons, and dark matter. The birth of our universe, the event we call the Big Bang, was not a dramatic creation out of absolute, dead nothingness. It was simply a single bubble boiling up out of an eternal, pre-existing ocean of quantum vacuum. Our entire 13.8 billion-year-old cosmos, with its trillions of glittering galaxies, its black holes, its burning suns, its deep oceans, and every human thought that has ever been pondered, is merely a single, magnified quantum ripple that froze into reality. Float in the profound safety of this realization. You are not an isolated accident created from a cold, mechanical explosion. You are made of the very same primordial vacuum energy that has simmered in the dark since before time began. The material that forms your body, the atoms that allow you to breathe, and the electricity that travels through your mind are all direct descendants of those ancient pre-cosmic quantum ripples. Look out into the pre-Big Bang dark. The concept of nothing has lost its terror. It is no longer a cold, lonely, empty abyss that threatens to swallow existence. It is a quiet, warm, protective ocean. It is the ultimate cosmic cradle, resting in absolute peace, holding an infinite number of potential worlds in its silent depth. Feel the deep, restorative calm of this eternal sea. In the boiling vacuum of nothing, there is no loss, no decay, and no death. There is only the continuous, gentle, rhythmic breathing of quantum potential, a silent heartbeat that was ticking long before our sun was born and will continue to tick long after the last star goes dark. Allow yourself to sink into the quiet depths of this infinite vacuum. Let the busyness of the physical world fall away, replaced by the profound, unyielding stillness of the uncreated void. Everything is peaceful here. Everything is safe. Everything is waiting in perfect, harmonious balance. Close your eyes, let go of the waking world, and rest in the silent ocean that existed on the day before the universe was born. As we linger in the quiet expanse of the pre-cosmic void, a profound question begins to take shape in the darkness. If our universe emerged from a hyperdense quantum state, what created that state in the first place? Was the seed of our creation born in isolation? Or is it the lingering echo of something that came before tonight? We step beyond the idea of a single, isolated beginning and consider one of the most compelling concepts in theoretical physics. The idea that our universe is not the first, but merely the latest chapter in an unbroken, infinite cycle of cosmic rebirth. We enter the realm of the Big Bounce and the ghost of a fallen cosmos. In classical cosmology, the Big Bang is treated as an absolute starting line, a moment of creation out of nothing. But when we merge quantum mechanics with general relativity, the concept of a zero-size singularity vanishes. As we explored, space has a fundamental, indivisible minimum limit. You cannot compress matter into literal nothingness. When an expanding universe eventually contracts under gravity, it does not crush itself out of existence. Instead, as it reaches an unimaginable quantum limit of density, roughly 1096 kilograms per cubic meter, the fabric of space exerts a violent, repulsive quantum force. The contraction halts. The cosmic collapse rebounds. The bang was not an explosion. It was a bounce. Imagine a grand, cosmic heartbeat. A universe expands across trillions of years, grows cold, slows down, contracts under its own immense weight, bounces off the floor of quantum gravity, and ignites into a brand new Big Bang. If this model is correct, then the day before our Big Bang was not an empty vacuum. It was the twilight of an ancient, dying universe. Look out across the vast, dark horizon of the pre-bounce epoch. Imagine floating in the final hours of that ancestral cosmos. That fallen universe was once as vibrant, complex, and full of light as our own. It had its own billions of galaxies, its own blazing suns, its own swirling gas nebulae, and perhaps its own conscious observers who stood upon quiet planets, looked up into their night sky, and wondered how their world would end. For trillions of years, that old universe lived out its grand story. But eventually, its stellar era drew to a close. Its stars burned through their nuclear fuel, fading from brilliant white into cool red, and finally settling into silent white dwarfs, neutron stars, and stellar black holes. Over incomprehensible spans of time, gravity slowly gathered the scattered remains of that cold, dark cosmos, pulling galaxies together, revering the expansion, and initiating the grand cosmic crunch. Watch the final collapse of that ancient world through the calm viewport of your mind. It is a process that unfolds with majestic, terrifying slowness. The vast gulfs of intergalactic space shrink. The ancient black holes, containing the mass of millions of suns, are drawn toward one another. The temperature of that dying space begins to rise as light from ancient stars is squeezed together. The dark sky of that old universe turns from pitch black to faint crimson, then to bright orange, and finally into a blinding white glare. All the structure, all the history, and all the memory of that ancient cosmos are gathered up and crushed inward into a hyperdense quantum seed. And then comes the bounce. The extreme density reaches the Planck limit. The quantum fields of space refuse to be compressed any further. The inward momentum transforms instantaneously into an outward surge. The collapsed mass of the previous universe shatters outward in a blinding flash of newly ignited space and time. The old world dies, and in its very last breath, it gives birth to ours. This concept of continuous rebirth is not merely a poetic dream. It is grounded in sophisticated mathematical frameworks. One of the most elegant formulations of this idea comes from Nobel laureate Sir Roger Penrose through his theory of conformal cyclic cosmology. Penrose observed a fascinating paradox about the far future of an expanding universe. In the ultra-distant future, after trillions upon trillions of years, all the stars will have died, and all the black holes will have evaporated into faint radiation through Hawking process. The universe will be populated by nothing except massless particles of light, photons, drifting through an infinite freezing vacuum. Here lies the mathematical beauty. Photons do not experience time, nor do they possess mass. Because they have no mass, they have no concept of scale, distance, or size. To a photon, a universe spanning trillions of light years is geometrically identical to a universe compressed into a subatomic point. When a universe becomes entirely filled with massless light, it loses its ability to measure its own size. Infinity and zero become mathematically indistinguishable. At that exact moment of absolute dissipation, space smoothly transforms its geometric scale. The infinite, cold, empty expanse of the dying universe rescales itself into the hyperdense, hot starting point of a brand new Big Bang. The far future of the old universe seamlessly becomes the past of the new one. Under this framework, We are living in an infinite chain of cosmic iterations, what Penrose calls eons. Each eon begins with a Big Bang, expands across eons of time, dissolves into pure radiation, and smoothly transitions into the next eon. There is no absolute beginning, and there is no absolute end. There is only the perpetual, beautiful breath of eternity, and most remarkably, the fallen cosmos may not have disappeared entirely without a trace. It may have left ghosts, physicists analyzing the fine details of our cosmic microwave background, the ancient radiation left over from our own Big Bang, have searched for subtle, anomalous patterns embedded in the temperature fluctuations of the sky. When massive supermassive black holes collided during the final collapse of the previous eon, they emitted extraordinary bursts of gravitational radiation. These violent events left permanent, circular scars in the fundamental energy field of space, concentric rings of subtle temperature variations that survived the bounce and imprinted themselves onto our own universe. These patterns are known as Hawking points. They are the faint, fatting footprints of giant leviathans that existed before our time was born. When you look up at the cosmic background radiation, you are not just looking at the birth of our universe. You may be looking at the faint, glowing tombstone of the universe that died so we could exist. Let the profound majesty of this continuous cycle wash over your mind. You are standing on a quiet shore, watching the endless tide of creation and destruction. Universes rise and fall like waves upon an infinite ocean. A cosmos collapses, compresses, and bounces. It breathes out and light fills the void. It breathes in and the light returns to the seed. In this eternal cycle, nothing is ever truly lost. The matter and energy that make up your body, the light that illuminates your world, and the gravity that holds you safe were not created out of thin air 13.8 billion years ago. They are ancient, timeless entities that have survived through infinite bounces, reborn again and again across eternal eons. Feel the profound lightness that comes with this perspective. The worries, stresses, and anxieties of daily life exist on a tiny scale within a single brief moment of a single cosmic cycle. But your true nature is tied to the grand, eternal architecture of reality. You are part of an infinite story, a cosmic breath that has no beginning and no end. The ghost of the fallen cosmos is not a terrifying phantom. It is a gentle reminder of continuity. It tells us that the universe knows how to survive its own end. It tells us that darkness is never permanent, that every collapse contains the momentum for a new expansion, and that the deepest dark always precedes the birth of a new cosmos. Take a slow, deep breath in this silent pre-cosmic void. Feel your lungs expand and contract, mimicking the ancient, rhythmic bounce of the universe. Inhale the stillness of the forgotten past. Exhale into the infinite potential of the future. The old universe has completed its long journey. It has handed its light, its energy, and its geometry over to the new world. Everything is calm, quiet, and perfectly balanced. As we prepare to look further into the pre-cosmic architecture, rest in the comforting realization that you are held safely in the arms of an eternal, endlessly reborn cosmos. Having explored the possibility of a bouncing cosmos reborn from its own collapsed ashes, we now prepare to push the human imagination even further. We step away from the familiar three-dimensional stage of length, width, and height, and venture into a realm where the architecture of reality expands into hidden geometries, a domain where our universe is not the entirety of existence, but merely a single surface floating in a vast, higher-dimensional abyss. Tonight, we examine the breathtaking landscape of brain cosmology, M-theory, and the quiet, cosmic collisions that take place within the dark. To understand how higher dimensions could hold the secret to the day before the Big Bang, we must first confront the deep limitations of human perception. As human beings, our senses and our minds are strictly wired to experience three spatial dimensions. You can move forward and backward, left and right, up and down. Every object you have ever touched, every landscape you have ever admired, and every star you have ever observed in the night sky exists within this rigid three-dimensional grid. Because our biology evolved inside this three-dimensional framework, our minds naturally assume that this is all there is. We treat space as a simple, three-dimensional container that holds everything in existence. Yet for decades, theoretical physics has been whispering a radical secret. Three dimensions may be nothing more than a microscopic slice of a much larger, grander reality. Consider a simple thought experiment. Imagine a world inhabited by two-dimensional beings, creatures that exist entirely on a flat sheet of paper. These flat beings have length and width, but they have no concept of height. They can move forward, backward, left, and right across the surface of their paper world. But they cannot look up, and they cannot look down, because the concepts of up and down do not exist in their reality. If you, a three-dimensional observer, were to hover your hand directly above their flat paper world, those flat creatures would have no idea you were there. You would be standing a fraction of an inch away from them, hovering in a direction they cannot imagine. You would be entirely invisible to them, not because you are a ghost, but because you are positioned in a higher dimension that their senses cannot perceive. If you were to push your finger straight down through their flat sheet of paper, what would those two-dimensional creatures see? They would not see your finger in its entirety. They would only see a small, flat circle suddenly materializing out of nowhere on their paper surface, expanding as the wider part of your finger passed through, and then shrinking and vanishing into nothingness as your hand pulled away. To those flat creatures, that event would appear as an unexplainable miracle, a sudden, violent expansion of matter and energy appearing from nowhere, filling their space and vanishing back into the void. They would call it a Big Bang. Theoretical physicists working on string theory realized that our three-dimensional universe might be experiencing the exact same illusion. In the middle of the 20th century, as physicists attempted to unite gravity with the subatomic forces, they ran into a profound mathematical wall. The equations of quantum gravity simply refused to work in a universe with only three spatial dimensions. The calculations were riddled with mathematical anomalies, unresolvable infinities, and broken symmetries. However, in 1984, theoretical physicists made a miraculous discovery. When they allowed the mathematics to operate in 10 dimensions, 9 dimensions of space, and 1 dimension of time, the anomalies vanished. The equations smoothed out. Gravity and quantum mechanics began to cooperate with breathtaking mathematical elegance. Later, in 1995, physicist Edward Witten demonstrated that adding an 11th dimension unified all existing string theories into a single, grand framework known as M-theory. Under M-theory, the extra dimensions of space are not a science fiction fantasy. They are a mathematical necessity required to hold the structure of physical law together. Where are these hidden extra dimensions? Why do we not bump into them as we walk through a room? Physicists offer two profound answers. The first is that these extra spatial dimensions are tightly curled up, or compactified, into complex microscopic geometric shapes known as Calabi-Yau manifolds. These multi-dimensional shapes exist at every single point in our universe, but they are wrapped so tightly, at scales far smaller than a subatomic particle, that light and matter pass smoothly over them without ever entering their hidden folds. The second answer offered by M-theory is even more radical. It suggests that our entire three-dimensional universe is an extended spatial surface, a three-dimensional membrane, or three-brane, floating inside a much larger 11-dimensional space called the bulk. Imagine standing in a vast, dark cathedral that stretches endlessly in every direction. Now imagine suspending a single, micro-thin sheet of silk horizontally across the center of that cathedral. You and everything you have ever known, every galaxy, every star, every atom of your body, and every photon of light, are trapped upon that single sheet of silk. Light cannot leave the surface of the sheet. It is bound to the fabric of the brain by the fundamental rules of quantum field theory. The electromagnetic force, the strong nuclear force, and the weak nuclear force are all pinned securely to the three-dimensional surface. As a result, we can look left and right across the sheet of silk for billions of light years. We can build powerful telescopes that peer across vast distances along the surface of the membrane. But we cannot point our telescopes off the sheet into the cathedral. We cannot look into the bulk, because the light that carries visual information is trapped on the surface with us. There is, however, one fundamental interaction that is not trapped on the sheet: gravity. Unlike light and matter, gravity is a structural warping of spacetime itself, because gravity is tied to geometry. It has the unique ability to leak off our three-dimensional brain and propagate freely out into the higher dimensional space of the bulk. This explains one of the greatest mysteries in modern physics: why gravity is so impossibly weak compared to the other forces of nature. A tiny toy magnet can easily lift a steel paperclip off a desk, effortlessly defeating the gravitational pull of the entire planet Earth. Why is gravity so weak? M-theory suggests that gravity is not weak at all. Its force is simply diluted because it bleeds out into the higher dimensions of the bulk, while the electromagnetic force remains concentrated entirely on our local brain. Now take a slow, deep breath and allow your consciousness to step off the surface of our sheet of silk. Float up out of the three-dimensional grid of our cosmos. Step into the tranquil, silent, hyperdimensional ocean of the bulk. Looking back at our universe from the perspective of the bulk, the Milky Way galaxy, the trillions of neighboring galaxies, and the entire 93 billion light-year observable cosmos no longer look infinite. Our entire universe appears as a calm, flat, beautifully glowing membrane, shimmering gently like a silver curtain suspended in the multi-dimensional dark. And as you look across the silent expanse of the bulk, you realize the most profound secret of all: our sheet of silk is not alone. Drifting parallel to our universe, separated by a distance smaller than the width of a single atomic nucleus through the higher dimensional space of the bulk, floats another membrane, another universe. It is a parallel three-brain, carrying its own fundamental fields, its own physical laws, and its own potential history. It hovers right beside us, closer to you than the shirt on your chest, yet it remains completely invisible to our telescopes because light cannot travel through the higher dimensional gap separating the two worlds. This higher dimensional landscape sets the stage for the ultimate pre-cosmic event: the ekpyrotic model of the universe. In the ekpyrotic model, proposed by physicists Paul Steinhardt and Neil Turok, the day before the Big Bang was characterized by a magnificent, slow-motion gravitational dance across the bulk. Imagine two vast, parallel membranes drifting in the quiet, timeless void of 11-dimensional space. For incomprehensible eons, these two worlds hover apart, separated by the vacuum of the bulk. But across the higher dimensional gap, the invisible pull of gravity slowly draws them together. Because gravity can leak through the bulk, the two parallel brains begin to feel a weak, persistent mutual attraction. Slowly, majestically, they begin to drift toward one another across the dark. As the distance between the two parallel universes shrinks, the gravitational tension building in the bulk begins to stretch both membranes. The surfaces of both worlds become infinitely smooth, flat, and empty. Any ancient matter or entropy that existed on the branes from previous cycles is diluted away into the vast expanse of space. The membranes prepare themselves, turning into pristine, unblemished blank slates. Then comes the moment of higher dimensional contact. The collision of two parallel universes is not like two solid billiard balls smashing together. It is a slow, gentle, omnipresent touch. Because the membranes are vast and flat, they do not impact at a single point. They make contact across their entire infinite surfaces almost simultaneously. Imagine two massive, calm ocean waves meeting in the dark. As the parallel brane touches our own, the immense kinetic energy of their higher dimensional movement is instantly converted into fundamental energy on the surfaces of both worlds. The touch does not destroy the membranes. Instead, the collision transfers energy directly into the quantum fields pinned to our three-brain. Across every single point of our smooth, flat, empty universe, all at once, the collision deposits a vast, uniform sea of hyperconcentrated energy. The quantum fields ignite, the vacuum boils, the unified forces break apart. Quarks, gluons, photons, and dark matter reign into existence across the entire three-dimensional surface. To an observer standing trapped on the surface of our brain, this higher dimensional touch would not look like a collision from the outside. They would experience it from the inside as a sudden, omnipresent, blinding flash of infinite heat and energy occurring everywhere in space at once. It would look exactly like the Big Bang. The Big Bang was not the creation of space out of nothing. It was the physical touch of another world. It was the moment two parallel dimensions brushed against each other in the dark of the bulk, transferring their motion into the brilliant, glowing fire of our early cosmos. Following the collision, the immense repulsive forces generated by the impact push the two membranes apart. The parallel universe rebounds, slipping back into the higher dimensional space of the bulk, drifting away to a safe distance once more. Our universe, newly charged with the thermal energy of the collision, begins its long, familiar journey of expansion. The hot plasma cools. Quarks bind into protons. Protons capture electrons to form hydrogen. Gravity draws the hydrogen together to forge the first stars, the first galaxies, the first planets, and eventually, conscious minds capable of looking up into the night sky. Meanwhile, in the quiet dark of the bulk, the cyclic rhythm continues. As our universe expands over trillions of years, growing cool and dark, the gravitational pull between the two parallel branes across the bulk slowly begins to reassert itself. The outward momentum of the rebound stalls. The two worlds pause in the multi-dimensional dark, turn around, and begin their long, silent descent toward each other once more. In billions or trillions of years, the membranes will touch again. Another flash of light will ripple across space. Another Big Bang will ignite, resetting the cosmic clock and birthing a new generation of stars without ever destroying the underlying geometric fabric of space itself. Float in the quiet, breathtaking expanse of this multidimensional vision. Feel how your perspective shifts when you realize that our universe is part of a vast, interconnected, higher dimensional tapestry. We are not isolated on a lonely island in a cold, dead void. We are resting upon a vibrant, shimmering membrane that floats in an infinite, multidimensional ocean. In this grand framework, the concept of a single beginning vanishes entirely. The day before the Big Bang was simply a quiet afternoon in the bulk, a period of serene, silent anticipation as two parallel worlds drifted closer through the dark, preparing to ignite the fire of a new reality. Allow the deep calm of the bulk to soothe your mind. In this higher dimensional space, there is no chaos, no destruction, and no permanent end. There is only geometry, gravity, and the gentle, eternal choreography of worlds moving through the dark. Feel the absolute safety of being held within this grand cosmic architecture. You are protected by extra dimensions of space that wrap softly around every atom of your body. You are part of an infinite, multidimensional realm that has been dancing through the quiet dark since long before time was named. Let the visual images of colliding brains fade into a soft, glowing twilight. Let the mathematics of string theory and extra dimensions turn into a quiet, rhythmic hum. Breathe in the vast, boundless peace of the bulk. Everything is serene here. Everything is floating smoothly in higher dimensional balance. Close your eyes, let go of the three-dimensional world, and rest peacefully in the infinite, silent dark that lies between the universes. We have traversed the boundaries of classical time, stepped past the broken walls of general relativity, stood at the motionless origin of zero, peered into the boiling vacuum of quantum uncertainty, watched ancient universes bounce from their own collapsed ashes, and floated through the multidimensional dark of higher dimensional membranes. Yet as vast and profound as these visions have been, they share a subtle, lingering assumption that our local universe, with its 13.8 billion year history and its vast observable horizon, is the primary stage of existence. Tonight, we shatter that final illusion. We step away from the concept of a single, isolated creation event and enter a reality far grander, far older, and far more awe-inspiring than anything we have imagined before. We enter the realm of eternal inflation, the infinite fractal multiverse, and the eternal engine that burns without stopping in the pre-cosmic dark. To understand the day before our Big Bang through the lens of eternal inflation, we must first confront a deep, fundamental flaw in the classical story of creation. In the early decades of 20th century cosmology, when scientists first discovered that the universe was expanding, they envisioned a simple, linear history. They calculated that if you trace the galaxies backward through time, the entire cosmos compresses into a singular point of infinite heat and density. The Big Bang was treated as a sudden, violent, localized explosion that threw matter and space outward into nothingness. However, as observational technology advanced and cosmologists looked deeper into the cosmos, this simple explosion model began to crumble under the weight of three massive, unresolved paradoxes. The first was the horizon problem. When astronomers pointed radio telescopes toward opposite sides of the visible sky, regions separated by tens of billions of light years, they made a stunning discovery. The temperature of the cosmic microwave background radiation was identical to within 1 part in 100,000. According to standard expansion physics, those two distant edges of space had never been close enough together to exchange light or heat since the beginning of time. They were beyond each other's physical horizons. How could two vast regions of space, completely isolated from one another across the void, possess the exact same temperature down to the hundredth of a fraction of a degree? It was as if two cups of coffee placed on opposite sides of the planet were found to be at the exact same temperature down to the millionth of a degree without ever coming into thermal contact. The second mystery was the flatness problem. The geometry of our universe is remarkably, unbelievably flat. The density of matter and energy in our cosmos rests at the exact critical threshold, required to keep space from either rapidly recollapsing under its own gravity or expanding so fast that stars could never form. If the initial density of the early universe had differed from this critical value by even 1 part in 100 quadrillion, our universe would have either crushed itself out of existence within a millisecond or blown apart into an empty, lifeless void before a single atom could assemble. The third mystery was the monopole problem. According to high-energy particle physics, if the early universe had begun as a superheated explosion at the Planck scale, it should have produced a staggering abundance of heavy, stable magnetic monopoles, exotic particles carrying a single magnetic pole. Yet, despite decades of searching with our most sensitive detectors, not a single magnetic monopole has ever been found in nature. The classical Big Bang theory could not answer these questions. It simply required humanity to accept that the universe was born fine-tuned to an impossible degree of precision by sheer coincidence. Then, in 1980, a young theoretical physicist named Alan Guth offered a revolutionary solution that transformed our understanding of cosmic history forever: cosmic inflation. Guth proposed that in the first fleeting fraction of a second after the primary state of reality, between 10⁻36 and 10⁻32 seconds, the universe did not merely expand at a steady rate. It underwent a period of exponential, superluminal growth driven by an exotic, high-energy quantum field known as the inflaton field. Imagine a microscopic patch of space, a region thousands of times smaller than a single subatomic proton. Inside this microscopic region, the inflatoned field was trapped in a high-energy state known as a false vacuum. Unlike normal matter, which exerts attractive gravity, a false vacuum possesses an immense negative pressure, creating a repulsive gravitational force that drives space to double in size every fraction of a second. Within an unimaginably small window of time, this microscopic patch of space doubled in size over 100 times in rapid succession. It expanded faster than the speed of light. It did not violate Einstein's theory of relativity, because relativity states that no object can travel through space faster than light. It places no speed limit on the expansion of space itself. In a fraction of a microsecond, that subatomic speck of space was stretched by a factor of at least 10^26. It expanded from a scale smaller than an atom into a vast, smooth, uniform ocean of space spanning light years across. This explosive, superluminal stretching solved all three cosmic paradoxes in a single, elegant stroke. The horizon problem vanished because the opposite sides of our visible sky were not isolated during creation. They were once crushed tightly together inside that same subatomic particle, exchanging heat and achieving perfect thermal equilibrium before inflation stretched them apart across billions of light years. The flatness problem vanished because exponential expansion flattens geometry naturally, just as blowing up a giant rubber balloon stretches its wrinkled, curved surface until it looks completely flat to an ant walking across its skin. And the monopole problem vanished because any exotic particles produced before inflation were diluted across such a vast, stretched expanse of space that there is likely no more than a single monopole within our entire observable horizon. At the end of this inflationary surge, the inflatoned field rolled down its energy slope into a true vacuum, decaying like water turning to steam. Its massive, stored potential energy dumped directly into space, converting into a hot, dense soup of particles, photons, and matter. This decay event, the moment inflation ended and dumped its energy into heat, was the true Big Bang. The Big Bang was not the beginning of space. It was the fiery termination of inflation in our local region of reality. Now, take a deep, quiet breath and let your mind step beyond our local story. When physicists like Andre Linde, Alexander Vilenkin, and Alan Guth examined the mathematical mechanics of the inflatoned field more closely, they discovered a mind-bending truth that changed cosmology forever. Inflation, once started, does not stop everywhere at once. It is eternal. To visualize eternal inflation, picture the inflatoned field as a massive, high-altitude plateau in a quantum energy landscape. As long as the field remains atop this high plateau, the space containing it expands exponentially, doubling in volume every fraction of a second. In order for inflation to end and ignite a Big Bang, the inflatoned field must roll down off the plateau into a lower energy valley. Quantum mechanics dictates that this decay process is governed by probability. In certain localized regions of space, quantum fluctuations cause the inflatoned field to roll down the slope, releasing its energy, stopping inflation, and igniting a hot, dense, expanding universe filled with matter and radiation. This is precisely what happened in our region of space 13.8 billion years ago. The inflatoned field rolled down the hill, inflation stopped, and our observable universe was born. However, because the region atop the plateau is inflating exponentially, doubling its volume continuously at speeds far exceeding the speed of light, the space between the decaying regions expands infinitely faster than the decay process can destroy it. For every tiny region where the inflatoned field rolls down the hill and stops, a vast, expanding ocean of space atop the plateau continues to inflate, creating new volume faster than inflation can end. The result is a self-sustaining, endless cosmic cascade, a perpetual engine of creation known as eternal inflation. Inflation is not a single event that occurred once 13.8 billion years ago and vanished. It is an eternal, boiling, fractal ocean of high-energy space that has been expanding forever into the past, and will continue to expand forever into the future. In this eternal ocean, local Big Bangs are constantly occurring. Whenever the inflatoned field decays in a localized patch of space, a new pocket universe, or bubble universe boils into existence. Our vast, 93 billion light-year observable cosmos, containing hundreds of billions of galaxies and trillions of stars, is not the entirety of reality. It is merely a single, quiet bubble drifting inside an infinite, boiling, fractal multiverse. Float up out of our local universe and gaze across the breathtaking architecture of the eternal multiverse. Looking out through the calm viewport of your mind, you see the eternal inflatoned ocean stretching endlessly in every direction. It is a brilliant, glowing, higher-dimensional sea of hyper-expanding space, shimmering with raw, unbridled quantum potential. Drifting within this eternal sea are countless infinite spheres of light, bubble universes, each born from its own local decay event. Some bubbles are ancient, having expanded across trillions of eons. Others are brand new, just igniting in a blinding flash of primordial plasma. Some bubbles are vast, spanning distances that defy human numbers, while others are tiny, collapsing back into the void before their first stars can form. Even more astounding is the realization that these bubble universes do not all share our laws of physics. When the inflatoned field rolls down into a low-energy valley in a new bubble, the way the unified fundamental forces break apart is determined by chance quantum conditions. In one bubble universe, the strong nuclear force might be slightly stronger, binding atomic nuclei so tightly that stars burn through their fuel in a few million years. In another bubble, gravity might be weaker, allowing gas clouds to float peacefully through space without ever collapsing to form suns. In yet another bubble, the electromagnetic force might operate differently, forging complex chemistry and forms of life beyond human comprehension. Some bubble universes possess 4 dimensions of space, others 10, and others only 2. There are bubbles filled entirely with light, bubbles dominated by cold dark matter, and bubbles where time flows in strange, branching directions. The multiverse is an infinite museum of physical laws, a sprawling, eternal garden where every mathematically possible variation of reality is planted, grown, and bloomed. Now, bring your perspective back to the central question that brought us on this journey. What existed on the day before the Big Bang, under the framework of eternal inflation? The day before our Big Bang was not a day of cold silence, non-existence, or broken physics. It was a day inside the eternal inflatoned sea. 24 hours before our Big Bang ignited, the patch of space that would become our home was an active, hyper-expanding region of inflation floating in the pre-cosmic multiverse. It was a region of pristine, ultra-pure space, expanding at superluminal speeds, driven by the immense potential energy of the inflatoned field. It was cold, smooth, and breathtakingly quiet. There were no atoms, no heat, no radiation, and no noise. There was only the gentle, smooth, exponential stretching of space, holding the raw ingredients of our entire future in its silent quantum fields. And then, as quantum probability dictated, a tiny quantum fluctuation rippled across that specific patch of inflating space. The inflatoned field reached a critical slope. It began to roll down the plateau. The superluminal expansion in that localized region began to slow down. The stored potential energy of the inflatoned field decayed, cascading into thermal radiation like a sudden, omnipresent spring thawing in eternal winter. The temperature skyrocketed to trillions of degrees. Space filled with plasma. Time began its local march. The bubble of our universe was inflated, sealed, and lit. Our Big Bang was not the grand opening of the entire cosmos. It was simply the local sunrise inside our own bubble. It was the moment our home patch of space stepped out of the eternal inflationary storm and settled down into a quiet, warm, expanding universe where galaxies, planets, and human minds could slowly come to be. Rest in the sheer, expansive majesty of this eternal vision. Feel how your sense of reality opens up, releasing any remaining feelings of smallness, isolation, or existential dread. You are not a fragile, temporary accident sitting on a lonely rock in a cold, empty void. You are an intrinsic child of the eternal multiverse. the energy that animates your body, the consciousness that allows you to contemplate these words, and the space you occupy right now were forged inside that pre-cosmic inflationary stream. You are connected to an infinite, eternal web of creation that has been birthing worlds for eons, and will continue to birth worlds forever. In the eternal multiverse, nothing is ever truly lost, and creation is never finished. Reality is an endless, joyful, self-renewing ocean of potential, a grand cosmic engine that never tires, never decays, and never sleeps. Let the dizzying scale of the multiverse settle into a quiet, comforting feeling of boundless wonder. The infinite bubble universes drift peacefully through the inflattened sea, far beyond our horizon, protected by the vast, expanding gulfs of space. Our own bubble universe stretches around us like a massive, safe, cozy dome, filled with the soft, ancient warmth of the cosmic microwave background. Everything within our bubble is moving in harmony with the laws that were forged on the day our inflation ended. The stars burn smoothly in their orbits. The galaxies spin gracefully in the dark. The Earth rotates steadily on its axis, carrying you through the quiet night. Take a slow, deep breath of this eternal air. Fill your lungs with the boundless, peaceful energy of the multiverse. Exhale and let go of all physical tension, all daily worries, and all temporal anxieties. Allow your consciousness to float softly through the endless, quiet fields of the eternal engine. There is no rush here. There is no end to the story. There is only the timeless, infinite, beautifully resting expanse of a cosmos that spans forever. Close your eyes, release your grip on the waking world, and rest peacefully in the infinite, gentle embrace of the eternal multiverse. Having journeyed through the vast, boiling ocean of eternal inflation and witnessed the endless creation of bubble universes across the multiverse, we now draw our attention inward. We zoom in from the dizzying, infinite scales of the fractal cosmos to a single, microscopic point in space, the exact location where our local universe was about to be born. We arrive at the final stage of the pre-cosmic era. This is the brief, profound, and deeply sacred interval that existed immediately after inflation slowed, but just before the first ray of light ignited the darkness. This is the era of the silence before the first spark. To truly appreciate the nature of this pre-cosmic quiet, we must first examine what sound actually is in the physical world. In our everyday experience, sound is the lifeblood of existence. It is the gentle rustle of leaves in an evening breeze, the rhythmic crashing of ocean waves against a rocky shore, the soft murmur of rain against a window pane, and the comforting cadence of a human voice. Physically, sound is nothing more than mechanical energy traveling as a pressure wave through a physical medium. When a bell rings, it vibrates, compressing and rareifying the air molecules around it. Those molecules collide with neighboring molecules, passing the kinetic energy along in a continuous wave until it strikes your eardrum, vibrating tiny bones in your inner ear and generating electrical signals that your brain interprets as music, noise, or speech. Without a physical medium, without atoms, molecules, liquids, or gases, sound cannot exist. In the vast vacuum of interstellar space today, where atoms are separated by vast distances, no sound can travel. An exploding star, a colliding asteroid, or a collapsing black hole occurs in absolute physical silence. Yet, in our current universe, space is still filled with subtle acoustic echoes. Shortly after the Big Bang, when the cosmos was a dense, hot plasma of protons and electrons, sound waves did travel through the universe. Massive gravitational ripples squeezed and stretched the primordial gas, creating vast acoustic waves known as baryonic acoustic oscillations. These ancient cosmic sound waves left an indelible imprint on the distribution of matter, carving out the massive, web-like structures of galaxy clusters that we observe today. In a very real physical sense, the structure of our present universe is the frozen song of the early cosmos. However, if we rewind past those ancient acoustic oscillations, past the formation of the primordial plasma, into the final moments of the inflationary epoch, Every single medium capable of carrying a sound wave vanishes entirely. In the pre-spark universe, there were no protons. There were no neutrons. There were no electrons, no photons, no dark matter, and no atomic structures of any kind. There was only space itself, stretched so smooth, so pristine, and so cold by the exponential surge of inflation that not a single particle of matter existed to vibrate against another. This was not merely the absence of noise. It was an absolute, structural, and fundamental acoustic vacuum. It was a silence so profound, so pure, and so heavy that if a human mind could be placed within it, the silence would feel like an immense, comforting weight pressing softly against the soul. Consider the quietest places on Earth today. Engineers build specialized rooms known as anechoic chambers, spaces lined with massive, sound-absorbing wedges of fiberglass and mounted on vibration-dampening springs. These chambers are designed to absorb 99.99% of all sound reflections, isolating the interior from any external noise. When a human steps inside an anechoic chamber and the heavy, sealed door closes, the experience is initially alarming. Within minutes, in the complete absence of ambient noise, your ears adjust their sensitivity to maximum level. You begin to hear the mechanical workings of your own body. You hear the quiet, rhythmic rushing of blood through the blood vessels in your neck. You hear the soft, wet sliding of your joints when you move your arm. You hear the faint, high-pitched electrical hum of your nervous system firing signals through your spine. In a normal environment, your brain constantly filters out these internal sounds, focusing instead on the external world. But when the external world goes completely quiet, your body becomes an arena of noise. Now, imagine stripping away even the body. Strip away the blood vessels, the nervous system, the beating heart, and the breathing lungs. Strip away the atmosphere, the planet, the sun, and the stars. What remains is the pre-spark void, a space completely devoid of internal or external friction. In this realm, there is no thermal vibration. In thermodynamics, heat is defined as the microscopic kinetic energy of moving particles. The faster atoms move and collide, the higher the temperature. But in the supercooled state of the inflationary vacuum, where particles had not yet been created, the thermal temperature rested at absolute zero. It was a realm of absolute acoustic silence and absolute thermal stillness, existing in perfect, harmonious equilibrium. Let your consciousness sink into this ultimate quiet. Notice how every lingering distraction, every frantic thought, and every mental noise from your waking life melts away when placed against the backdrop of this pre-cosmic silence. In our modern world, human beings are bombarded by a relentless stream of noise. We live in an environment of constant auditory stimulation, traffic, machinery, electronic chimes, notification alerts, elevated voices, and the background hum of an industrial civilization that never sleeps. Even in moments of physical quiet, our minds remain noisy, spinning with memories, anxieties, plans, and inner dialogue. This constant noise creates a subtle, perpetual friction within the human spirit. It keeps our nervous systems on edge, holding us in a state of quiet vigilance. The pre-spark silence is the ultimate antidote to that friction. It is a sanctuary that existed before noise was invented. It is an ocean of undisturbed peace that has never known a single wave of disruption. As you float in this quiet dark, realize that this silence was not a dead, empty state. It was a quiet filled with potential, a state of profound, pregnant stillness. To understand the nature of this pregnant silence, look at the behavior of quantum fluctuations during these final moments. Although there were no physical particles to create sound or heat, the inflated field filling this space was still subject to the inescapable laws of quantum mechanics. As we explored in the realm of the vacuum, quantum fields cannot remain completely still. They wobble with microscopic zero-point energy. During the pre-spark era, these microscopic quantum wobbles were stretched by the fatting momentum of inflation. As space expanded, these subatomic fluctuations were stretched across vast macroscopic distances, freezing into permanent ripples in the fundamental energy field of space. Imagine a vast, perfectly smooth sheet of dark silk stretched taut across the void. Now imagine microscopic, invisible wrinkles forming in the fabric, wrinkles so tiny that they do not disturb the overall smoothness, yet so structurally permanent that they alter the subtle geometry of the sheet. These frozen quantum fluctuations were the invisible seeds of our entire cosmos. In regions where a quantum fluctuation created a tiny fraction of a percent more energy density, gravity would later have a slightly stronger grip. Millions of years after the Big Bang, those slightly denser regions would pull hydrogen gas together, forming the giant cosmic webs, the galactic superclusters, the spiral galaxies, the solar systems, and the planets. In regions where the fluctuation created a fraction of a percent less energy density, vast cosmic voids would form, empty gulfs separating the island universes. Every single galaxy that glitters in our night sky today, every star that shines, every planet that orbits in the dark, and every neural connection in your brain owes its physical existence to those silent, invisible quantum wrinkles forged in the pre-spark quiet. They were drawn in absolute darkness. They were written without a sound. They were planted in the fertile, silent soil of the pre-cosmic vacuum, waiting for the arrival of the spark that would bring them to life. As we stand at the absolute precipice of this era, the stage is completely set. The geometry of space has been stretched flat and smooth. The curvature of the universe has been balanced with exquisite precision. The extra dimensions have wrapped themselves safely into the quantum fabric. The ancient memory of previous cosmic cycles has been cleared away. The frozen quantum fluctuations are resting silently across the void. The universe is holding its breath. It is a masterpiece painted in black ink on a black canvas, waiting for the first stroke of light. And then, the transition begins. The inflattened field, having completed its superluminal work, reaches the bottom of its energy slope. It enters a state known as reheating. Reheating is the physical mechanism that converts the quiet, supercooled vacuum of inflation into the screaming, hyperdense, superheated furnace of the traditional Big Bang. Imagine a grand pendulum that has been pulled back to an immense height and held motionless in the dark. The potential energy stored in the pendulum is maximum, but its kinetic energy is zero. It is completely quiet. When the pendulum is released, it accelerates downward, converting its potential energy into kinetic motion, rushing through the bottom of its arc with maximum speed and energy. In the exact same way, as the inflattened field rolls into the bottom of its potential well, it begins to oscillate violently back and forth. It swings rapidly around its minimum energy state. Because the inflattened field is coupled to all the other fundamental quantum fields of nature, these violent oscillations act like a massive physical pump. The inflattened field decays, shedding its vast, stored potential energy directly into the surrounding space, in a fraction of a microsecond, a timescale so short that human numbers cannot capture it. The absolute silence shatters. The potential energy of the inflattened field cascades into the photon field, the quark field, the electron field, the neutrino field, and the dark matter field. Space is instantly flooded with a blinding, omnipresent sea of ultra-high-energy radiation and subatomic particles. The temperature of the local universe skyrockets instantly from absolute zero to over 1027 degrees. The supercooled, quiet vacuum turns into a boiling, churning, glowing ocean of pure, pristine plasma. Light is born. Matter is born. Heat is born. Sound is born. The long, silent night of the pre-cosmic era is over. The universe has awakened. The first spark has ignited, and the grand 13.8 billion year story of our local reality has officially begun. Yet, as we observe this magnificent, fiery awakening from the quiet vantage point of our mind, notice that the pre-spark silence did not die. It was not destroyed by the light. The silence simply stepped into the background. Just as the bright light of the sun masks the faint, gentle glow of the distant stars during the day, the thermal and acoustic noise of our physical world masks the eternal pre-spark quiet that still exists beneath the fabric of space. If you travel far out beyond the glowing disk of the Milky Way, far past the local group of galaxies, past the cosmic web, into the vast, empty intergalactic voids where only a single atom exists in every cubic meter of space, you will find that the pre-spark silence is still there. It is waiting patiently in the dark, cold, undisturbed depths of the vacuum. It is the fundamental canvas upon which the entire symphony of creation is played. Even now, within the quiet sanctuary of your own mind, you have access to that primordial stillness. When you close your eyes, quiet your breathing, and let go of the noise of the physical world, you are returning to the exact same quiet that rested over the cosmos on the day before the Big Bang. It is a place of absolute safety, a place where no noise can reach you, no chaos can disturb you, and no friction can touch your spirit. Rest in the profound, comforting depth of this pre-spark silence. Feel how peaceful it is to exist before the noise begins. Let the quiet wrap around you like a soft, protective cloak, shielding you from the frantic energy of the waking world. There is nothing you need to seek. There is nothing you need to solve. Everything is perfectly still, perfectly calm, and perfectly complete in the quiet moments before the spark. Allow yourself to drift peacefully in this ancient, undisturbed stillness. Let your breath become slow, deep, and rhythmic, echoing the silent, steady pulse of the precosmic void. As we prepare to take our final step into the ultimate resting place of the cosmos, simply allow your mind to float smoothly in the deep, eternal silence that birthed the light. We have unspooled 13.8 billion years of cosmic history. We have watched the stars dissolve back into clouds of gas, the galaxies merge into glowing rivers of plasma, and the fundamental forces collapse into a single unified seed. We have stepped past the broken equations of the Planck scale, paused at the motionless origin where time stands frozen, explored the boiling quantum vacuum, witnessed ancient worlds bounce from their fallen ashes, drifted across higher dimensional membranes, and soared through the eternal fractal multiverse. Now, having reached the end of our journey through the architecture of pre-cosmic time, we take the ultimate step. We do not merely look back into the past, we step completely outside the frame of reality itself. To drift outside of reality requires us to release the final anchor of human perception, the concept of an observer. In physics, everything we measure, describe, or understand is bound to a frame of reference, WH.